So a lot of things to think about if you're finalizing
Yeah.
contracts in Europe long term at the moment, and a lot of unknowns as well. So, let's turn to the Pacific. The Freight Bicycle will be at Manifest in Vegas next month and TPM in Long Beach at the start of March. Very much ground zero for Transpac tendering season. How do you approach the Trans-Pacific buying season, especially on the ocean side? I'm presuming you're expecting rates this year to be lower than last, but then we just talked about a whole load of disruptions. So, I mean, not all of them play through to the Transpac, but some of them do.
Some of them do. Some of them play the other way. Look, it's an age-old discussion, spot versus contract. And some of it just comes down to your personal appetite and how comfortable you are with gambling. Some of it comes down to policies or prevailing attitudes within a given BCO, saying we want to take advantage of every movement in the. If you're a spot shipper, you'll typically say, "Listen, I know that there will be times when I'm paying huge amounts of money to move my cargo. There'll be other times when I pay less, and I always want to be able and flexible to take advantage when the rate drops. And since the rate drops more often than it goes up, I think somebody in the house always wins." That's one way to do it. You got to have a strong stomach. You got to have a strong cash flow for it. And no two shippers are created equal. Others, but particularly the large shippers, the really large ones, the 100,000 TEU and up, they value stability and predictability more than they value opportunity, right? I did actually a deep dive a couple of weeks ago for our own internal customer newsletter where I looked at the Trans-Pacific rates over the last 13 years, because that's as far back as Shineta would let me go. And I looked at short-term rates, which is Shineta's term for spot, and I looked at all contracts, no matter when they were signed for all contracts. It is true that over that 13-year period, long-term rates have increased a little bit more than spot rates seen over the whole period. But what you'll see is there's remarkably little volatility in the contract rates since we got on the other side of the pandemic. There's virtually none. It's up and down, a little bit up and down for 3 years. So if you value predictability and control, and you're not really fussed if the rate, if for a week or two you're paying $100 over the odds, then you should absolutely go contract and not spot, right? The same turns out to be true. I actually looked it up because I knew you were going to ask me about Europe. I looked it up just before this podcast. I just went back 3 years in Europe, and then I went back 1 year in Europe and the Med. If you just look at 1 year, Asia North Europe, there were exactly 2 tiny periods, a little bit in April and a little bit in October. There was short windows where you would have been better off on the spot market than with a contract. For the rest of the time, you were spot, you were paying way over the odds relative to contract rates. On the Med, on Europe Med, Asia Mediterranean, the picture is exactly the same, except that back then it was only in April that you would have been better off in the spot market than with the contract market. So I think, in a very long-winded way, getting to the answer, I recommend contract rates. I understand the attraction of spot rates. If it was me as a BCO, I would be 70, on those 2 markets, I would be 70-30, 70% contract, keep 30% of the volume up my sleeve for opportunities. That's it. The other thing about contract rates that most people intuitively understand, but some don't live, is relationships matter. History matters. Mutually rewarding business relationships matter. And when some crisis hits, and you have been in shipping long enough to know that there's no year without one, at least one, right? Whether it's the trade war, whether it's the pandemic is separate, that's really completely out.
This podcast being a case in point, which is totally rewritten this morning
Yeah,
based on what happened in
Venezuela, right? But it could be a major earthquake, or it could be a hurricane. It could be the Suez situation that we all faced a couple of years ago. It could be the trade war that we've all lived through since April of this year and the consequences that followed. There will be one, at least one, in 2026, maybe 2, maybe 3, right? When that happens, you know where the spot market is going to go. and where the contract market is not going to go. So you need to be exposed to both. I prefer 70-30. I think is a good number. It depends on your business. It depends on how much you like roller coasters. I'm not a big fan, but others are, right? So I can't sit here and give you the answer, the magic formula, but I think 70-30 or 60-40 is about right.
70-30 is pretty clear answer there. Freight buyers, buying advice from Bjorn Vang Jensen.